Hello everyone, welcome to SwitchUp. My name is Glen and today we've got another review for you, this time for MotoGP20, written by Marty, so thank you very much Marty. Now I'm the kind of man that believes that we never stop learning. It doesn't matter how old you are, there's always something new for you to be introduced to, and it's with that mindset that I came towards MotoGP20. This is the kind of series that expects the player to have a certain pool of knowledge or relevant experience to draw from, and I came here with neither. So whilst I may not be able to talk at length at the exact physical specifications of how the weight of your tailpipe affects your ability to steer, I can most certainly talk about the sort of fun there is to be had here. So does MotoGP20 blaze into the lead, or does it need a trip to the pit stop? Well, thank you to the publishers for the review code, and now let's find out. Let's begin this review then by talking about the deluge of options that are available in this game. In short, I was incredibly impressed. You can add, remove or change various HUD elements, and controls are fully customizable. Having said that, I couldn't find a difficulty setting anywhere within the menus. The game had me choose my preferred difficulty on first load and made it clear that the physics simulation is tied to this choice and that I'd be able to change this in the options later. It was odd that this was absent from the options menu, but I'll soon get to why this wasn't an issue. For modes you've got a very involved career mode, quick play, a challenge based historic mode, local multiplayer and customization. Along with difficulty selection, first load ran me through a painfully simple racer customizer, gender and head for aesthetics and not much else. I'm thrilled to say that this was not a good example of the game's customization mode in the slightest. You can make your own colour palette and create your own layered textures to be worn on your rider's suit or helmet, not to mention a healthy wardrobe of options for those as well. I even got to pick a riding style. Good stuff so far. The rider customization absolutely had me stoked to check out career mode. As a clueless outsider, the splash screen and Grand Prix selection both presented like the game was prepared to teach me everything I'd need to know. That went out the window the moment I chose which Grand Prix I'd enter. Without being given direct nor contextual info, I was thrust into hiring a manager with traits and unclear stat points, signing onto a sponsorship with contractual obligations and ordering engineers and analysts from out of nowhere to research what I perceived to be improvements to my bike. I'm going to be honest, I was entirely and absolutely lost. After pressing a button to progress a handful of weeks, new contract offers were appearing and I could opt to hire different managers without having felt like I'd even done anything yet. This clueless outsider was kept an outsider. It was way too much for me to process right off the bat. And there were even more menus and expectations to come, appearing just before it was time to actually take to a track. Perhaps a little more explanation of exactly why you are doing some of the things you are doing, just for those that aren't necessarily fans of the sport but are interested in getting on board, would have been useful in this career mode. I want to briefly cover the other gameplay modes before I loop back around to the actual racing gameplay. Quick Play offers 3 sub-modes, Grand Prix, Time Trial and Championship, which as far as I could tell is similar to career mode minus the behind the scenes involvement. It was in Quick Play mode where I realised that the game's difficulty options, physics settings and many other modifiers were saved within each mode. So even though I was initially confused as to why it was missing from the main menu options, credit where it's due, finding it in here felt like a wonderful fit. Finally, historical mode. This is a series of daily challenges where you can win reward currency to be spent in the mode specific reward shops. You don't get to set your own physics and modifiers here, the challenges have their settings locked. Interestingly, the costs of shop items changes with time too. And just quickly worth noting, there's a photo mode you can access at any time across all of the game modes. There are all sorts of ways to move the angle of the camera, and it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to pull off some impressive or technical shots. So enough about the modes, how's the actual racing? I'm happy to report that there's a lot of variance here, depending on the physics and modifier settings, and with enough fiddling, the game really can be made to be played as simply or as complicated as you'd like. It is quite impressive just how many options there are available to you, and whilst as someone who's never engaged in the sport I still found it difficult to find that sweet spot where the difficulty felt tailored to me, I can appreciate of course that this game isn't made for people like me necessarily, and it's for the fans of the sport, and in this respect, the sheer number of modifiers, settings and gameplay modes will have fans of the sport, or perhaps people who even engage in the sport for themselves, in their element. I should also mention as well that there is a multiplayer option within this game, although unfortunately and regrettably I wasn't able to try it. In terms of controls, as mentioned earlier, the buttons are remappable, though I never needed to change anything. Left stick steers, the right trigger accelerates, left trigger and X are for front and the rear brakes. Y and B handle the gear shifts. handling the bike made enough sense, and my only complaint would be that I'd like for more fine control over the gas and brakes, but of course the Switch doesn't have the analog triggers necessary to do this properly. For the modes on offer, their perceived depth, and all the fine tuning present in the physics and modifiers, gameplay scores 16 out of 20. Controls are handled incredibly well, and as I said, I never felt the need to change anything at all, and they score 18 out of 20. Next then we'll look at the visuals and the audio, and at this point I just want to mention that we've been told that there will be patches or updates coming to add certain things to the game, with the first one coming on the 23rd of April. Some of these fixes include adding a bike damage indicator onto the dashboard, adding additional cutscenes in both career mode and quick modes, improvements to the animations of the riders, as well as improvements to the physics of the bike in terms of the damage it takes. Now with that said, we'll start with performance. Now as you can see from the graph on the screen, the game runs at 30 frames per second, although it does drop down sometimes into the high teens when you enter a packed field. Now there are two options, a motion blur option and one without motion blur, and whilst it was mentioned that the motion blur option may cause performance issues, strangely enough in our tests it was this mode that seemed to run better. This could just be an anomaly, but it's there for you to see nonetheless. The visuals themselves are a bit muddy and the environments can be quite bland, and unfortunately it does also seem to be guilty of the practice of putting screenshots on the eShop that clearly aren't from the Switch version of the game. On a more positive side, the HUD provides the player with all the information they might need about their bike and of course the ongoing race, and the menu interfaces are all nice and clean. In terms of the audio, the main sound that you will hear is of course the sound of the engines during the races, and although there is limited commentary at the start of races on that opening cutscene, that's about all you get. This just breaks the immersion a little bit, to be perfectly honest, and is a shame because obviously the game is going for a realistic approach. While some may balk at the idea of having music whilst the races are going on, bearing in mind there is no commentary and all you hear is the sound of the bike, it may have been an idea to have it as an option to toggle on and off within the menus. With the dip in performance in mind when things get a bit crowded on the track, plus the fact that everything just looks a bit muddy and bland, visuals score 11 out of 20. Audio sounds realistic enough, although the option, as I mentioned, to have music available would have been nice, and it scores 11 out of 20. MotoGP20 costs £39.99, €39.99 and $39.99, or it will set you back 75 Australian dollars. And whilst this is towards the higher end of the prices available on the Nintendo Switch eShop, in fairness there are a few different modes to play and a few different ways to play them. This could last fans of the sport for quite a while, with plenty of tracks and the very involved career mode. The Switch version is missing online multiplayer though, and that's a shame no matter how you look at it. With all this in mind, value scores 13 out of 20. To conclude, MotoGP20 is a game with enough depth and replayability to last fans of the sport for a very long time. Whilst I appreciate it's always difficult to make such games accessible for everyone, I do feel there are certain things that could have been done to make it a bit more accessible to people that are interested but do not have the prior knowledge that hardcore fans would have. The dips in performance are unfortunate, plus as mentioned, the visuals are a bit muddy, although as also said, there are patches coming that will fix some of this. MotoGP20 gets a SwitchUp score of 69%. A huge thank you to Marty for writing this one for us. It's always difficult when it's a sport you have no real knowledge of. I tried playing Mutant Football League the other day, that was a laugh, and to be fair he's done a stellar job. Please do remember to leave a like if you like what you've just seen, and consider subscribing for all things Switch all the time. A quick thank you to our patrons as always for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, stay safe, and until next time, happy gaming.